Great. Okay. So this way you won't be on the recording. Well, if you say something, your voice will be, but I hope this way. It's just my face, just being recorded, just for people who couldn't come. Yeah. So great. As I said before, we are kind of embarking on a new sort of theme. So every Monday now, we will explore the theme of our system of practice. Yeah, so we will explore the theme of meditation. Yeah, so what are the different elements um, of Buddhist meditation in the way that we understand it within our community, which is not so different from the bigger Buddhist tradition. So really, it's just a way of trying to find words or trying to find on what kind of processes are at work when we meditate. Yeah, so that's usually how I like to think about it. Yeah, what kind of processes are happening in the mind, are happening with us when we meditate. And last week, Aryapala I think, gave a sort of overview over all these different stages of meditation and processes. And now we're looking at them in turn. So I will start with the first one. Yeah, so step one. We'll explore that together. So the first one is called integration. Yeah, integration. So that's might sound a bit, I don't know, abstract or mechanical or something. So all these stages have sort of are names that might not be that don't necessarily come from the Buddhist tradition, but they're ways of finding words or finding descriptions of what's happening. So you can actually find them in most Buddhist meditation systems. So the first thing is integration. Yeah, integration. So integration basically means what we're trying to achieve through meditation is we're trying to achieve what we call an integrated mind. Yeah, an integrated mind. And we're sort of focusing on meditation, and I'll say a bit more about that later. But meditation, obviously, in Buddhism, it's not just a standalone practice. Yeah, meditation in Buddhism is, the main method in which we're trying to develop our mind. But obviously, that has effects on our whole life. Yeah, so when we're talking about mind or something, it's not a sort of internal private thing. It actually, we always mean sort of our wider life, our environment, these sorts of things. So I'll be looking at integration from the point of view of our mind and meditation, but then also, okay, how is integration practiced in our day-to-day life as well? Yeah, when we're not on the cushion or on the desk chair, as I was today. So let's start with meditation because that's sort of the theory. Because meditation really is, like, sometimes I like to think of it as the sort of laboratory conditions for our mind. Yeah, so obviously our mind is there all the time. We could be meditating all the time, but it's easier to look at it in meditation, and then we can bring what we learned in meditation into our daily life. Yeah. I studied biology, so that's where that metaphor comes from. I have little roses there in labs and stuff, so I like that sort of image, planting, our mind, the seeds in our mind. So what we just did was as I said, we tried to develop awareness and mindfulness. Yeah, awareness and mindfulness. So awareness and mindfulness you could say, are the tools for integration. Yeah. So we're using awareness and mindfulness to achieve that process of integration. Yeah, so integration is a process. So as I said, usually our state that we're in is, distracted, we're sort of a bit sort of pulled into different pieces. We have different aspects in our life. Usually when we try to sit down to meditate, the first thing we notice is how unaware we are of ourselves, how wild our mind is. Yeah. So that most people have that experience. Some people have a sort of, I don't know, just a pretty clear, pretty astonishing experience for the first time. That's what we usually call beginner's mind. And then the second time they do it, it's only distraction, only monkey mind again. So that's usually how we go through life. We keep sort of we keep being pulled up into a sort of foggy, barely sort of slightly vague way of thinking about ourselves and our life. Yeah, so we're usually in this sort of unaware, pondering sort of mental state, which sort of just keeps going from A to B to C to D and never seems to sort of rest at one point. Yeah, we keep thinking about you know, okay, what do I have to do? Okay, so I have that meeting, and then, but before I have that meeting, I need to go there. But then that person will be there, and I have a real conflict with that person. I really hate that person. Meanwhile, we're actually just trying to, I don't know, unload the dishwasher or something. And instead of just being aware of what we're doing right now, we keep sort of proliferating into all these stories about ourselves, our people, other people. Um, um, well, the world, what we will do later, what we want to do, what we don't want to do right now. It's a sort of it's this whole we sort of keep sort of sometimes I feel like we keep experiencing life from this sort of very removed place, which is just making a story out of what we're experiencing. So we seem to live in this story about ourselves and about the world. Yeah. So without actually having that sort of touch of our direct experience. But usually we're not aware of that. We're just doing it. We're just in doing mode. So then when we sit down and actually bring awareness to that, it can be a bit overwhelming. It can be a bit like, oh gosh, this is what's happening in my mind. So much distraction, so much circus up there, that it can be a bit overwhelming, it can be a bit painful. So, but actually, it's a good step. Actually, it's a good first step because this is what awareness is trying to do. So, as I said in the meditation, when we are aware, and when we bring awareness to it, distraction will come because when we're distracted, usually we don't know that we're distracted. But to notice distraction is part of that meditation. Yeah, so to notice distraction is like a really, really good first step. Yeah, that's like, bam, you did it. Great, amazing. Because it means you're slightly more aware of your mind than before. You're slightly more there than before. It's not so much in your unconscious, or at the back of your mind. Now the distraction has sort of stepped, that whole story making machine up there has sort of stepped one little step further to the forefront of your mind. Yeah, so this is what awareness is trying to do. Awareness is trying to broaden out your consciousness. Yeah, so this is what we call awareness. Is we're trying to broaden out our consciousness, and I mean that sounds a bit, or maybe it's easier to say we're trying to broaden out our experience. Yeah, so we're trying to broaden out what we can experience. We generally start with the body because the body is quite a tangible thing. We have all sorts of physical experiences. It's good to be aware of the body. So we start by just noticing how we feel, how the body feels, if we have pain, if we have tension, what's relaxed. So we're just trying to open that window, so to say, that sort of mental window which lets in experience. We're just trying to open ourselves up to our physical experience. Yeah. What's quite important here is to really feel the body. Yeah. So when I say things like, okay, now become aware of your feet or your legs or something, sometimes what people do is they just think, okay, foot, leg. But what we're trying to do is we're really trying to get into that direct sensation. Yes, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get into that direct sensation. Sometimes we can't really find words about how we feel. Yeah, so when I say, okay, how does your foot feel like something? You're not trying to name that. You're trying to feel it. You're trying to experience it. Yeah, so that's quite important. We're trying to really have this like intense, lived sense of our body. Yeah. Because the more we experience, the more life we get as well. We feel more life, the more we can feel and experience. And then, as I said, also in the meditation, we broaden out more, not just to the body, but to our feelings, noticing, oh, we have all these different things going on. So sometimes feelings can be on the surface, sometimes feelings can be sort of just below the surface, sometimes emotions can be really deep, and we don't actually notice that they're driving us along. Yeah. So broadening out the awareness can actually allow all that to come up. Yeah, we can allow. Sometimes we don't have space in everyday life to actually feel all the emotions we want to feel. So in meditation, we can now finally sort of sit down and allow all that to be experienced. Yeah, whatever wants to be experienced can be experienced, and that can happen in this sort of broad field. Yeah, and then thoughts, emotions tend to be linked. It's just depending on what type we are, we seem to focus on one end or the other. They tend to, emotions tend to bring thoughts with them, and thoughts tend to be expressed in sort of in the body, in our emotions as well. So just noticing that as well, what kind of mental images we have. Again, at this point, we're not trying to control anything. We're just trying to sort of open up to, oh wow, there's all this stuff in us. Yeah, there's all this stuff in us and around us that we're usually not aware of. That usually we, sort of know is going on, but we don't really feel it. Yeah. So that process, by just doing that, without trying to kind of fiddle around with the experience, because that's usually what we're trying to do, what we're doing as well, is we try to sort of fiddle around with experience, try to make it better or make stuff go away in our experience. By just being with that, that's what we call horizontal integration. Yeah, so that's a bit of so integration comes in two parts, and one of that is horizontal integration. It's almost as if you're just sort of broadening out what is there, but just getting to know what is there. You're getting to know yourself, you're getting to know your senses, you're getting to know your mind, your emotions. You really broaden all that out. And what then follows is that you become on that sort of horizontal level. It's a bit of a technical term. You become more integrated, which means that all of a sudden, all these different bits in you, all these different emotions and thoughts, they can kind of start to be in relationship with each other. They can start to communicate with each other a bit better. Being unintegrated means that sometimes you're that bit and sometimes you're that bit. Yeah, sometimes that emotion takes hold. That particular way of seeing the world or seeing a particular person takes hold of your experience, and then sometimes that one. What we're trying to do is we're trying to let all them speak at the same time. Yeah, we're trying to give them all space. I mean, sometimes it's quite clear with other people. Yeah, I don't know if you have like a close friend or maybe a colleague or something, and sometimes they do things that upset us. Yeah, sometimes they do things that disappoint us, and your perception of that person really changes depending on what they did to you. Like yesterday, there might be your best friend, your soulmate, everything's lovely, and then they do that little thing, and all of a sudden, a different part of yourself comes up and and now dominates how you view that person. They disappointed you. They're like that. They've always been like that. Really, da 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 da. So all these different bits of us usually take hold and try to sort of win our way of seeing things. So by just sort of broadening out, what we've managed to do is we managed to see everything at once. We see, oh gosh, I really love that person, but I'm also really upset. And I'm really grateful for all they've done for us previously. You sort of you manage to actually become a more balanced sort of individual without canceling anything out of your own psyche, out of your own mind. Yeah. So that's sort of one aspect of that, and then the other aspect is what actually can happen when you just are aware of all that. What can happen is that you unleash a tremendous amount of energy. You become more energetic. Yeah, sort of internal energy starts to sort of be unlocked, because usually, if you always just sort of live from certain elements of our psyche, of our self, then we only use the energy that's available to that bit. I mean, sometimes when you're angry, yeah, for example, usually our personality becomes quite narrow. We're just then about that anger in that moment. All there is that anger. And it can feel very energetic because in anger there's a lot of energy there. But the energy that usually goes into love, that usually goes into gentleness, that's unavailable to you at that moment. So what we're trying to do through that horizontal awareness is trying to actually be able to use the energy that's in the anger, use the energy that's in love, use the energy that's in kindness, etc., etc. So trying to bring them all together so that we can become a bit more of a sort of, our hearts can become bigger, we can have bigger, stronger, more resilient minds, etc. Yeah. So this is what sort of happens through just being aware. Yeah, that's awareness. That's horizontal integration. And then the next thing is what we call vertical integration. So that's that bit. That's then what we did with focusing on one point. Yeah. So at first we just sort of lay bare whatever there is. We just sort of see, okay, so that's there, that's there, that's there, that's there, that's there. And then we take that little anchor, yeah, like a sort of central point almost, as if you can imagine your awareness being sort of circle or maybe like a ball. So we're trying to find something that's inside, like a little anchor, and that's the breath. Yeah, in that particular practice. So you're not trying to just see the breath, like be very tense about it. What you're just trying to do is you're just trying to gently place the breath in the middle of it all, and try to invite all these different elements, all these different sensations and aspects and emotions to not just be in some sort of communication with each other, but actually to harmonize around it. Yeah, you're trying to invite it around the breath. You're trying to create this sort of lovely, harmonious mind where different bits of you aren't in conflict with each other, where different emotions don't sort of cancel each other out or whatever, where everything becomes a sort of lovely, harmonious whole. Yeah. You're not trying to sort of munch everything together and squeeze it together. Yeah. So your different emotions still can be very complex. But they're more, the energies sort of flow together nicely. You're giving them a sort of focus point, a sort of reference point. So what I try to do is when I sit down is I watch the breath, and I'm sort of aware of whatever else is going on, background thoughts. Sometimes it's strong distraction, and instead of thinking, oh, I'm supposed to think about nothing, I'm supposed to just follow the breath, I'm just going to cut off this thought or this emotion. Instead, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to feel into it, bring awareness into it, and then say, okay, let's watch the breath together. Let's just inviting that element to watch the breath together. Yeah, and it can still go on. The mental image usually then still goes on, but slowly loses energy. Yeah, slowly uses momentum and calms down. Yeah, so it's both of these processes of just opening up and then bringing together. Yeah, so that's what we call vertical integration, and it's vertical because what then happens is that more and more of your subconscious can come up, more and more of your deeper layers can come up. I mean, sometimes what happens to me in like long retreats, for example. So I go on long meditation sessions, yeah, usually like a week or two long. I've been on a few 3-month long retreats as well. So usually what happens is the more you meditate, the more you do that, like a lot of like really old memories come up, like old childhood memories that I thought were locked up. Like all of that just sort of starts to come up. And you think at first it's distraction, but actually it's this sort of unlocking of deeper elements of yourself. Yeah, that can happen. And that's why we call it vertical. It's a bit technical. It's a bit of a technical language, but yeah, so you're not trying to sort of forcefully munch everything together into an integrated mind, but you're actually trying to just be open up and then find a point. And then usually what happens is it comes together by itself. Yeah. So that's the idea. Maybe just to finish, yeah, so I said, so that's kind of meditation. It's a bit technical, all that, but that's usually what happens in meditation, but it's obviously a metaphor for our lives as well. Yeah, so what is So the first step to have an integrated life as well is to, do we allow our life to be cluttered? Is our life sort of, are we aware of all the different bits in our life? Do we keep forgetting appointments? Do we keep sort of rushing around in this sort of like, oh God, I'm always busy? Or do we take agency of our calendar, for example? I mean, I used to be terrible with that. I used to just sort of rush from one appointment to the next, always thinking, that feeling of always being sort of slightly behind your life or something. You sort of slightly haven't quite caught up with your life. Gosh, the laundry still isn't done. You wake up one morning, want to put on a t-shirt, but there's nothing there because you haven't thought of actually organizing your laundry or whatever. I mean, when you're a parent, you definitely have to take responsibility for all of that. I mean, you really learn integration and responsibility when you're a parent. I imagine. I don't know. I'm not one, but so do you see? It's really taking that responsibility. So integration has to do with taking responsibility for, is your life sort of disparate? Is it sort of pulled away? Are there different elements which don't quite sort of fit together? And does it create this sort of nice whole? Do you sort of move through your life always feeling like, oh yeah, this is what I want to be doing at this part, or I always know why I'm doing what I'm doing at every given moment of your life? And it's huge questions, and but that's where we start. Yeah, so that's where we start with awareness. We start with watching the breath. We start by cleaning up our room. We start by, sort of making a sort of harmonized whole out of our lives. Yeah. And even though, just to finish, even though we call these things stages, so even though this is called the first stage, it doesn't mean you have to fully finish and perfect this one before you can go on to the next one. It's just that's where we start. But actually, it'll only be finished in, I don't know however long it takes. Maybe when we become a Buddha ourselves or something, then it'll be perfected. Yeah. So don't worry. It's an endless process. It's not going to be finished by one day or something. Yeah. So it's a whole journey. Yeah. There can always be more integration. So don't worry about it. It's a step by step little thing. Like awareness. I mean, maybe if maybe you notice that just in the body scan as well with awareness, that actually awareness is endless. Like awareness of the body can be endless. Like you can zoom into every little sensation. There's always more. Yeah, so it can sound like you have to perfect 100% something here, but it really is just that's just the process you're trying to start. You're trying to start that to unlock energy, to take responsibility of your life, etc., etc.